All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Larson Life Group replay. This meeting is live on May 1st, 2024. I am Jim Larson, direct to Symmetry Financial Group by way of Jamie Susie, Sarah Reinecke, Jacob Hogue, and the Marshall Wayland hierarchy. I will argue that we are in the best hierarchy. My friend coming up here, he might disagree with me because he's got a pretty rock star team there himself. But guys, I'm so excited to introduce you to Michael Mathews. Sid, if you can go ahead and just spotlight Michael here for us, bring me up there with him so I can introduce him and hang out with him. That would be awesome. I'm going to give a second, wait for this to click in before I even introduce him. But man, I'm excited for this. Michael Mathews was one of the top 5 rookie AOs in the entire company last year, broke out last year as an AO, one of the top 5 AOs by volume there. I'm just reading this. This is my favorite thing. When you emailed these stats, I want you guys to hear this. So he joined in midway through 2021, right? So June of 2021. 6 months, all of 2021, he wrote 15K, period, in all of 2021. Like 6 months, he wrote 15K. We got people writing 15K like in a week. This dude took 6 months in that learning curve to write 15K. The next year, 2022, 270K on his own pen. On his own pen. 270K in a year on his own pen. And then last year, breaks out as an agency owner with an agency of $1.1 million. Dude is straight up now running $1 million agency. In 6 months, he did 15K. I cannot wait for you guys to meet him. Let's get this spotlighted here. I'm going to join up. Michael Mathews, my man, what is going on, dude?
What's up, man? It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be able to be here. The energy, the chat, you guys are blowing it up right now. I like it.
Well, I'll tell you, man, people ask me all the time about like building a team and like, because we're growing real fast, right? And they want to know, I'm like, all I do is create a place people want to be part of. And nobody wants to be part of a Zoom meeting where nobody's on and it's stale and boring. And nobody wants to be like, I'm like, man, we want to create everyone on here is part of the environment. They're inviting people too. So if we're going to be here, like, let's make it good.
Yeah, I like that. Hey, with the leaderboards and everybody chiming in just to support, it's the culture that matters. People come to Symmetry for the leads, but they stay here for the culture. That's what I believe.
So good. So give us your story, man. What brought you to Symmetry? You came midway through 2021. What was going on in your life at that point that you're like, you know what? I want to go sell life insurance.
So for me, you guys, number one, make sure I'm showing respect. Name Michael Mathews. I'm direct to Kristen Andrea Smith, any Marty Valor, Ben Safety4, Danny Young hierarchy, and obviously I'm extremely grateful to be so. Just because without those folks I name, I wouldn't be here. Just point blank and period. The guidance, the mentorship, and more importantly to me, the friendship and relationships that they offer, like has truly changed my life. So I appreciate every single one of them. But to kind of talk about that though, Jim, like how did I end up in the life insurance industry? That's probably the $1 million question we all ask ourselves because nobody thinks about getting insurance. But for me, I came here, I played college basketball before I came here. So I started the business in July 2021. But before that, I was in school. COVID happened in 2020. I was playing basketball and it shut down school for that next year. So I decided just to take the year off to be able to save a year of my eligibility. And then the fall of 2021, I had all the plans to go back to school. I had an opportunity to continue to play basketball, but my fiance, well, my now fiance, she was working at Target. She was working at Target in the spring, and she was like, "Man, I'm tired of working here. I need to work somewhere else." I was playing basketball all day, you guys. So I'm like, I got time to just go search for some jobs for you. So I went on Indeed, and I was scrolling, and it said collegiate athlete, 75 to 300K. I was like, I fit the bill, but why is that on Indeed? Like, why does it say 75 to 300K? And I
That's a
clicked on it
wide,
and it talked
wide
about
price range there too.
it is. And that's why I'm like, this can't be right. But when I clicked on it, it talked about insurance. And I knew nothing about insurance. Just to give you guys some of my work history real fast. When I was like between the ages of like 12 to like 17, I worked at a rec center. and I played basketball all day. So that doesn't really count as a job because I just played basketball and I ate the free food at the rec center. And then my freshman year of college, I went out, I broke my arm my freshman year, and I went and got a job at the post office as a mail carrier because I needed to work, I needed to bring some money in. That's my working. That's where it starts, that's where it ends. So talking about insurance, like you said, Jim, you knew nothing about like cancer insurance or anything like that. I knew nothing about nothing. So when I saw it though, the big thing that stuck out to me, it talked about growing a business. And I knew when I started working at the post office, the culture, talking about the culture, the environment, it was terrible. It was just so negative. Everybody hated it. Everybody had arthritis. Everybody was just counting the days so they can just retire. And I was like, all right, I know this isn't if because everybody was hyping the job up as well. It's like, hey, this is a good career. Like you need to keep that, get all this retirement in 20, 30 years, get all these benefits. And I was like, for $1,500 every like 2 weeks, I'm like, I don't know if this is it. So that's when I made the decision. I was like, I need to own a business. And then I saw this. I was like, all right, this is my opportunity. So I just took it and I ran with it.
So it was ownership for you.
Yeah, that's the piece that stuck. Because in my mind, you can make money anywhere. As long as you're a hard worker, you can make money in a lot of places in my mind. But it was the ownership piece and something that I was gonna have control over.
Yo, I love that. And so then you came in and you just took right off and went right to agency owner, didn't you?
Yeah, I wish it was that. Honestly, to be honest with you though, Jim, I'm actually glad that I did it. Like when I came in here, I'm glad that I didn't although during the time I probably wished I did, to be honest. But looking back and reflecting on it now, like the foundation I was able to build for myself by going through that struggle and humbling myself and realizing, okay, I'm not all that. And like just staying in that suck for a little bit and learning how to embrace personal development. I needed that. I needed that for myself because I need to learn how to stay disciplined, stay consistent, and know how to lead myself effectively. But overall, though, those 6 months, they were pretty slow.
I know. So leading yourself, learning to lead yourself, that's I mean, I think we even put that up as like the title of this thing. I know that's a topic you're really big on. Can you walk us through how you developed that? And specifically in that suck, in that 6 months of like, you had to be wondering, is this gonna work out for me or not? Am I wasting my time here? Should I be doing like that goes through everyone's mind when they're in the learning curve.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
helped you stay here? What helped you stay plugged in? What did that look like? And then truthfully, like just why didn't you give up?
So for me, during that 6 months, like kind of that thought you just talked about runs through everybody's head. That thought came through my head in month two when I went into witness protection. Because I came in my first time dialing was like July 12th, and it took me 3 weeks or about like 2.5 weeks to get my first policy. Protecting my first family, it was like A1 leads or A2 leads back then, but it was a really cheap lead. So it was almost like a 50-cent lead and all those things, but because the scale went backwards for some reason. But I protected my first family, and then August came and I just disappeared. Like I wasn't plugging in the calls, I wasn't dialing, I wasn't buying leads. And I remember my upline calling me, Chris. He called me like halfway through August. It's like the probably going into the third week, and he was like, "Hey, buddy," he's like, "What's going on?" He was like, "Haven't heard from you, haven't seen from you. Is everything all right?" And I was like, Chris, like everything is good. I'm out here dialing, I'm getting leads, I'm just getting told no, getting porched, not realizing in my head though that he can see every time I buy leads. So I was lying and I got embarrassed about it and all those things. So with that, it just didn't feel good to do that. So I was like, all right, you know what? Let me actually plug in. In September, it came out and I just plugged in. I just started plugging in Associate more and I hit my slingshot, but October is where things really started getting tough for me because when we start learning this business a lot more, we start going ahead and we start talking a lot more in our appointments. So I started becoming a salesman and all of those things. And at the same time, my first week of October, I remember I wasn't getting the results that I got in September. So I was like, oh man, my process is messed up. Like, oh, the script doesn't work no more. Oh, I got to change my phone script. I got to change my appointment script. Oh man, my upline doesn't know what they're talking about. Oh, I got it. It has to be the leads. So every week in October, I just switched it up and I was just throwing stuff at the wall to try to figure out what was going to stick. But I was looking around me, Jim, and I realized, like, man, this guy came in the same time as me. This guy came in after me. they're seeing the success that I want to see. What are they doing? So I called Marty up. I was like, hey,
Let me
what is
pause
so
you.
and
Let
so
me
doing?
pause you right there for
Go
a second,
ahead.
because I think that you're gonna see you're talking to your people right here. Go ahead, put a 2 in the comments if you came in with somebody that's now way ahead of you and you're ever thought to yourself, what the heck? I want to see the 2s. I want to see the honest people in the room that are like, man, they came in with me. What are they doing? There we go. You're talking to some people here. You got to talk to some people. I see
Hey,
people
it's
all
important.
across these comments.
It's important to be able to embrace that and realize that too. One of the biggest pieces in this, and that was the point that I got to, was taking a bite of that humble pie, you guys. I had to take a bite of that humble pie and realize it wasn't the leads, it wasn't my mentor, it wasn't the training, the scripts, it wasn't any of that. It was me that was the problem. It was the me who I was in that moment that was not doing the things that I need to do to become successful here. Because the magic that I was looking for was in all the work that I was avoiding, you guys. Was in all the work that I was avoiding. I was trying to take shortcuts. I was trying to take the easy path, but it wasn't there. And I promise you, if you're looking for that, if you're looking for those shortcuts, that easy path, then I'm gonna be honest with you, this ain't it. This ain't it, because it's gonna challenge you and it's gonna call you up. And it's when I had to, and that's why I said I had to go through that to be able to take a step back and realize that I was the problem and I was the one that had to grow. Because I heard about personal development when I started. And I was like, yeah, like I'm personally developed. I'm 22. At 22, I know what I'm talking about, right? So, but I needed that to realize, like, okay, I need to be a student. I need to be coachable. I have no experience in this industry. How in the heck can I come in and say I can reinvent the wheel or know how to do it my own way? Didn't make sense. But one of the reasons I didn't quit, just kind of answer the other part of your question, was because in November, I took a step back and I realized that I was super embarrassed about it. I was embarrassed about the position I was in. Like my bank account was always in the negative, like every week. Every week, my bank account would go in the negative. Because soon as I get a little bit of money, some bill came out that was catching up on it. And I was like, and I was very disappointed in myself because all I heard when I stepped in this business, like, hey, you don't know what's ahead of you. Like, you're so young in this business and there's so much opportunity ahead. Hey, you can do, I wish I was in your position. Or hey, if I was in your position, I wouldn't know what to do with this. And although I was saying good things and may have been showing up and putting work in, I was doing all the things that they said I shouldn't be doing. And I was like, man, I'm letting them down. I'm letting their belief down. But then also looking at my now fiance and like, man, I'm not giving her the life that she deserves. And the one thing that I was afraid of the most, Jim, I was afraid of the me I was in that moment, looking at the me I could have been in the future. Like, man, I could have been that. Like I could, if I would have just stuck with symmetry, I could have been that. So that's why I didn't give up.
I'll tell you, I was talking to the accountability group this morning, and I was talking about fear, and it was that same thing, man. I had someone ask me, like, how do you get over this fear? Because they felt like they were holding themselves back. And I'm like, at first, you just have to find something bigger to be afraid of.
Mhm.
Like, truthfully, like everyone knows my story. I was here, I quit, I came back. When I came back, I still was afraid of the phone and afraid of failure. But you know what I was more afraid of? Going bankrupt and losing my house. I was more afraid of that. And so at first, sometimes you just got to find a bigger fear. And so I love that motivator of that fear of seeing who you could have been if only. Man, let that be a motivating fear. That'll get you.
100. I'm just thinking about it now. I just kind of sunk to my stomach a little bit. I'm like, ooh, because even in some of the things that I do now, it's like, no, I can take it up a level now. Like, don't get comfortable. I had a conversation with Marty the other week. Like, I feel like I got comfortable a little bit. I'm in a position now where I don't have to worry about my bills are paid and all those things. Where I was 3-4 months behind on bills then, and I was like struggling. But now it's again finding that new level to get motivated, to stay inspired, and to stay after it. But to answer your question though, Jim, I'll probably say that's what it was. That's why I didn't quit.
Yo, I love that. Now, obviously, looking at, the struggle of in and out, the inconsistency, right? The come in, the ghost mode, the kind of come back, the struggle mode, the like, okay, now you got a real fear, you got this motivator, you're starting to believe like, all right, I can do this, I got to figure out how to do this. You go in that next year, man, 270K on your own pen in a year, coming off 6 months of just struggling through a learning curve. Was it a light bulb? Did things just start to get more comfortable? Walk us through how you got to that place.
Yeah. For me, you guys, and if you guys heard Danny Young speak, you've heard him say this before, and it's you just got to do the right things long enough. You do the right things long enough, you will see success here. That's it. Now, the difference, though, and I remember hearing Danny say that back then, the difference is the long enough for everybody is different. The long enough for you, Tara, is going to be different than the long enough for Anna. Anna, the long enough for you is going to be different than Lisa's. So we have to figure out, and we have to be okay with what our timeline is, but we just have to stick through it. So at the end of that 6 months in November, Jim, that is when I truly committed. I committed to the process. I committed to symmetry. And I went out, I was like, you know what? I'm going to follow the system. I'm going to be coachable. And I showed up to my mentors. I'm like, hey, here are my numbers. And I restarted my learning curve, but I was intentional about it this time because I heard about the learning curve, but I didn't take it serious. I'm like, it's all right. I'm gonna get through it with time. Like I was a master procrastinator back then. I'm like, it'll happen. Like it'll happen when it happens. So I started getting intentional and broke it down. And by looking at the numbers, by listening to my recordings, and by showing up, I realized, okay, this is what I got to work on this week. This is no longer a problem. I don't have to change the entire process. I just got to fix this one thing right now. I don't need to worry about steps 6, 7, 8, and 9 and 10 right now. I just need to focus on steps 3 and 4 because that's where I need to be able before I get to step 5. So when I started focusing on that and overcoming the objections on the phone, locking down my appointment, closing my appointments, then it became when January came, it just clicked. And that's when I started taking off. But more importantly, what clicked even more was now that I started investing into leads consistently. At the end of December, I would during that 6 months, I may get leads this week, I may not get leads for another 3 weeks. I remember my upline offering me, hey, because back then you had to assign A leads. Hey, do you want any leads this week? Nah, I'm all right. I'm okay. I still got leads from last week, or I got leads from 2 weeks ago. I never dialed, so I'm okay. I'm just gonna keep working those. But leads go stale. Those people they stop picking up the phone after a while. You need a fresh contact list to give yourself the opportunity to be successful. And that first 6 months I didn't. So going into January, I committed to a standing lead order, although I only had $300 left in my account, and my car broke. And I was like, do I fix my car? Do I pay for these leads? Do I pay for rent? So I just like, I'm gonna get the leads because if I get the leads, I can pay for everything. I can pay for everything if I just get the leads and I just protect the family. And then once I got those leads, I realized, okay, I can't spend all this money. Protect the family. I can't spend this $1,000. Yes, I have things I have to go catch up on. I got to get some food. I got to go catch up in the car, but I can't spend it all. I need to set $300 aside so I can make sure I have leads next week. Because if I don't have leads next week, I'm gonna be in the same position as I was before. I need to make sure I am using the money I make in the business to reinvest back in the business. And that is what allowed me to stay consistent because now my activity was there. If I had a lead order and the money was coming out and the leads were in my account, guess what I had to do? My back was against the wall and I had to go work those leads now. So that allowed me to stay consistent. And I did the work on the skill side to make sure I was able to build myself up. But more importantly, I would say during that time, I would say my maturity and just realizing that this business comes down to you just wanting it and you just staying disciplined and motivation. I know you guys talked about it. I know, Jim, you talked about it, but motivation is going to fade and it's going to wane. But you have to be able to stay inspired. You have to have a strong enough why that is going to get you through any obstacle that steps in your path. Even when things get comfortable, even when you see yourself at the top of the leaderboard all the time and you get there, well, that's not it. You're here for more than that. You are meant for more than that. So don't get comfortable there and continue to challenge yourself. But that is what I feel like the real big jump in 2022 was that I knew how to lead myself better. I was more consistent. And I was just more aware than I ever was. I wasn't okay with giving myself excuses and putting limitations on myself anymore because I was embracing everything that I was capable of here at Symmetry.
Man, that sounds like a master class in personal development. And I feel like you didn't stumble on that in January of 22. Were you
Mm-mm.
going through some personal development stuff in 21? Like when you were kind of inconsistent, were you reading books? Were you plugging into stuff there then?
So for me, it was in that first 4 months, that July to October, there was no personal development. Marty and Chris, they'll send me books and I wouldn't read the books. But in November and December, and I'm gonna be completely honest, there still wasn't any, I still wasn't reading, but when it came to the personal development, for me, it came through a lot of reflection. It came through a lot of reflection in myself. And how did I even get in this position in the first place? Like what were the flaws? What were my weaknesses that even allowed me to get here and understanding the habits that I built that I didn't realize were habits. Well, okay, well one of the habits were, well, I'm a super positive person. I'm always optimistic and I'm like, everything will figure themselves out. Well, everything doesn't always figure themselves out sometimes. You gotta have some urgency because when there's a lack of urgency, you guys, it's gonna call for a higher demand later. And I realized that I was like, well, if I just stop pushing things off and I take care of them when I'm supposed to, all right, that'll probably solve a good amount of my problems. It was also having like truly in-depth conversations with Chris and Andrea and Marty and Hillary, and just about how I was feeling, what was on my mind, and reconstructing my mindset. We hear people talk about the thermostat all the time, resetting that thermostat. Well, I grew up, you guys. I'm one of six kids. I grew up in inner city Rochester, New York, and my mom was single. My mom and my dad split. My dad was on drugs, and my mom, she was disabled, and she eventually fell kind of a little bit down that same path. So I grew up in we were always poor, and I only saw the environment around me, and that was something I was like, okay, well, I just kind of got to deal with that. Those are the cards, and that was the hand I was dealt. But I kept that same mindset of when I was there, even just kind of as throughout my adult life and as I was growing up, and when I got here, and I realized I can't bring that here. I can't bring that baggage from where I grew up. No. Yes, I can accept it and know that, hey, those things did happen, but how can I use that as motivation? How can I leverage that to keep me pushing forward? Because those things were hard. Those things were hard. And we say this business is hard, but which one is truly harder?
Mm.
Going through that and seeing your family go through that, seeing the curse, seeing the stripes that your family placed on itself, or plugging into this business and getting through the learning curve and rewriting those stripes. Which one is truly harder, you guys? Getting told no or the things we've been through in life? Because we all have our own level of power. We all have our own difficulties. Not here to compare or contrast the differences between our hearts, but our hearts are unique to us. So it was a lot of that reflection, a lot of that acceptance, and then just moving on and not letting those things hold me back and feeling like I was bigger. And that's why I moved out of Rochester. I came down here to Kansas City to be closer to my upline because I had to get out of my environment because my environment would no longer shape me because you see things as you are, but you want to be able to see things. Well, I said that quote wrong, so I'm not gonna scrap that one. But I had to be able to get out of that environment, and it was a lot of the association just with better people. Just to be honest with you.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you when we grow, however we grow up, we kind of go one of two ways where we either adopt that as like our fate, our narrative, our identity, or we
Hmm?
go the 180 and we just reject that and we say like, listen, my parents might have chosen that or been in that situation and that might have been how they were, but that doesn't need to be me. And I feel like for so many people, they go the one direction, like this is my family and it's who I am. And so they feel stuck, circumstantially stuck. And then it sounds like you took that other approach where like, nah, I'm gonna break this chain, man. I'm not gonna be bound by the chain that's bound people that have gone before me. I love that.
And it's huge. And again, that's you just have to be able to accept that and you have to be able to leverage it. And the people around your environment is so huge. And that's something I can't understate enough. That's why I love this company. And that was another big thing on why my flag is planted here, because I don't have to wear a mask around anybody here. I get to be authentically me. I know I'm gonna be celebrated for who I am. And I know the people here are gonna call me up.
Mm.
Everybody I'm around is going to call me up. They're not going to allow me to BS. They're not going to allow me if they see me slacking or they see me not living up to my potential or whatever that may be. I'm like, Michael, what are you doing? What are you doing? they're not going to encourage that behavior. So, yeah, I love everything Symmetry has to offer, and I love the people I get to work with.
Well, I'll tell you, and kudos to you too. Like when I run this accountability group, like I call people out to a high challenge, high accountability environment where exactly what you're talking about. Like I'm not going to let you get away with less than you're capable. And I tell them, like, I'm not going to talk to you in your present. I'm going to talk to your potential, because I need you to start seeing yourself and identifying yourself in your potential, not in where you're at now, but where you can be. I need to talk to that person because I got to call that person out of you, because for so many people, that person lies dormant. And so I love that person. Like it takes a level of development to be willing to hear that from people. Because at first you don't want it. It's uncomfortable. You want to believe that your circumstances are bigger and stronger than you are, because then you have an excuse for not rising up. But if I start telling you and taking your excuses away and saying you have no excuse, you're making the choice and you're making bad choices, well, now you got to take accountability and responsibility for that. And that ain't always fun.
That is true. Yeah, that is true, because especially in those moments, and this is why we talk about the why, this is why we talk about the vision, because you guys, your vision has to become big, and the bigger your vision becomes, the smaller those obstacles become. The smaller they become, and you have to be able to grow yourself, because the way we viewpoint it, if we're looking at it as a mountain, you're obviously trying to be able to get to the top of the mountain. But if you're stuck and you can only see the path in front of you, well, you can't see on the other side of that mountain. You can't see the trail up there. You can't see the light because you're only at the part of the mountain where all the clouds still are. You're not at the part of the mountain where the sun is shining, and you have to be able to get there. So, Jim, that was powerful. I just wrote down a note right there too.
So I actually love that you brought up environments. I think that's so big. I think we're often blind to the influence our environments have on us. And we've all put the quote, put a 3 in the comments if you've heard that thought or quote that we are the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. Yeah, we've all heard that one. So here you're talking to a guy, Michael Mathews. He uprooted his entire environment and moved from his hometown to a whole new city just to be in a new environment with supportive people. I argue that your environment, like your social environment, those people, that's just one environment. Your physical environment is another one, which you uprooted both your physical environment and your social environment. And then a third environment is your spiritual, mental environment, which is what you're feeding yourself, what you're watching, what you're listening to, what you're consuming as far as information goes. That's also going to play a role. And so you take a guy like Michael here, who was so intentional with his environments, he consumed things that built him. He surrounded himself with people that built him. He put himself in a physical environment that built him. Who's surprised he's built now? You can't lose in that environment. Man, I'm super proud of that. Outside of environments, talk to us about what other resources, corporate or even team resources, that were instrumental in you not just getting through the learning curve, but stuff that you find invaluable, that you're like, man, I plug everyone into this. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have these resources. What were those things?
For me, one of them was the national call. Like, the national call is so huge. Like, I'm a competitor, you guys. I'm super competitive. I embrace it. I play basketball, so it's just part of my nature. But I look at it, it's a positive in my mind. And going back to even when I was struggling, when I had that question, that when I asked Marty that question, like, what are they doing that I'm not? And it wasn't coming from more of it like an envious kind of thing, or like a jealous, like, oh man, like whatever. Like, when I get on those national calls and I see those leaderboards, even today, when I see those leaderboards and I see what those people are doing, those new writers, the agency owners, ADs, key leaders, whoever it may be, I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, then this agent on my team can do it. And I go on there to be able to raise my belief, to be able to help raise my agent's belief so they can see what's possible. That's I feel like that's what Symmetry does so well. They show people what is possible. They show people what's possible for them, but you have to believe what's possible. Because that's what we get. We're gonna get what we believe at the end of the day. We don't get what we want, we're gonna get what we believe. And if you're not plugging in, if you're not associating, if you're not seeing what's possible here, then where's your belief gonna be at? Especially if you have no experience in the industry, especially if you've been getting told no the past 2 weeks on the phones, and you've been cold on the phones. If you're not plugging in, getting close to the fire, Where's your belief going to sit?
Mm.
So I would say national call is one of them. And then when I first started, there were SoundClouds. I don't know. I think the SoundClouds may still be out there,
They're still
but
out there.
SoundCloud, they are.
Yeah, they're still out there.
So
You
the
gotta search for
SoundClouds was one of them for me. Oh, you do? Yeah. They were that was huge for me. But last but not least, I would say, and this is a resource, this is how I look at it. But when you're on those national calls, you guys, or you're on a call like this and you hear a guest speaker speaking, there's somebody that truly resonates with you, something that I did that I didn't share. But this person right here, I'm forever grateful for. Still have a great relationship with him still to this day. Is when Marty had a mini conference. He had a mini conference and he had a gentleman come on named Jeremy Whitaker. Jeremy
dude.
came on.
Come
He
on with
shared his
Jeremy
story.
Whitaker. That dude,
Man,
he was big for
that
me. He was one of the first people I heard, and coming from like selling frozen meat out of his truck, right? And I'm like,
yeah,
all right, man. Like if he can do it, I can do it, right? Like he did. He
right.
was that guy for
Like
me too.
he came the work he put in when he was doing that and his encounter with Brad. But when I heard his story, it just resonated with me, and I'm like, Marty, I got to speak with him. I got to talk with him. And I talked with him on December 14th when I was going through that learning curve. And he just poured an hour and a half of his time into me, answered my questions. But he has never even seen me. I don't even know if he knew my name at the moment. But I reached back out and I followed up with him. A couple months later, I was like, hey, everything you said worked. Like it worked. Like I followed it and it worked. But every leader here is a resource in my mind. Like I'm a resource. Like utilize me to the best of your ability. Like wherever I can plug in and wherever I can pour into your journey and make some sort of impact or serve you somehow, I'm a resource. Reach out. And that would be something I'll say that I utilize all even to this day. Jim, me and you were talking a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
I reach out to leaders all the time. Everybody here is a resource. So I would say it'd be the national call and it'd be the multiple leaders here. But the only way to get to know the leaders is if you plug into the calls.
100%. I'll tell you, leaderboards were man, it was such an ego thing for me at first because I feel like it's a double-edged sword. For some, on some part, it's like, yeah, it's showing me what's possible, but then for an undeveloped person, it's showing that it's shining a light on what they're not doing. And you take two roads, and you see this. I see this all the time, and I'm sure you do too. One person's going to say, this is so inspiring, shows me what's possible. If they can do it, I can do it. The other person's going to say, this is so depressing. Of course they can do it. If I was in their shoes, I could do it too, but I'm not like them. Same thing. You're going to pick the road, that the lens that you want to interpret that in. And I love bringing different people onto the calls because all I want for every one of you is to find one person, just one, that makes you feel like, man, if they can do it, I can do it. That changes everything. I mean, that was Jeremy for you. That was a combination of Lee Jedlicka and Jeremy Whitaker for me. That combination, both those guys, man, they made like, all right, if they can do it, I'm watching Lee Jedlicka. He was on the Susie call last week. If that dude can put up, I don't know how many 300 something weeks in a row of 10K production, 10K plus.
He's ridiculous.
Dude, he's another level. But I didn't even need to do that. I'm like, all right, if he can do that, I might only be half of that, 10% of that. And I'd be cool,
It's
right?
not bad still.
Like, it's not bad.
Half of that is not bad. I'll take half any day.
Right. And so you plug in long enough and you hear the stories. It's why I say be on the calls. It's why Michael's saying be on the calls, because you're going to find someone that makes you believe if they can do this, I can do this. And that person becomes someone you model after, you learn from, you chase. That's so good. What's next for
And
you?
then
Oh no, go. You go.
Oh no, you're good. I was just gonna say I want to challenge you guys too. Like for those of you guys who may not be plugging in, for those of you guys who may feel I don't need it, then that is a growth opportunity for you. That's a growth opportunity for you to be able to grow and act. Maybe you don't understand. Maybe you don't understand why the calls are so important. Well, reach out to some of the leaders here. Reach out to some of the folks at the top of the leaderboard. Reach out to Jim. You guys have so many people. Reach out to anybody in Symmetry. Just gain their perspective. You may have but gain their perspective on how they see it. That's what I want to be able to challenge you guys on, because just the opportunity here, don't waste it. Please don't waste it. But also, if you feel like you aren't making the momentum that you need to be, if you feel like your mindset is not in the right place, if you feel like the struggle that you've been going through has been too tough and it's been too hard for you, I want you to ask yourself, Well, what are the two paths? Kind of like you said, what are the two paths that you get to take? You get to keep, if you keep on fighting, if you keep on doing the right things long enough, you know what the end of that rainbow is going to look like. You see all the possibilities that are going to take place over here. But if you decide to quit, what are you going back to? Are you going back to what you were running away from? Is what you're fighting for? So I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings here or step on any toes, but if what you're fighting for so meaningless when you find that path and you find that route and you have that, but the work was too hard to embrace, that you're like, you know what, I'm okay with I'm going back and choosing the hard I was in before instead of embracing the hard you were in for a season here. I want to challenge you guys on that. Like, find your why and dig in. Go to your upline, have a conversation. I had to do that. I had to find my why. My upline challenged me on that. But I definitely want to be able to leave you guys with that and reach out to your upline, give you some homework on that. But Jim, you talked about what is next. For me right now, it's continue to help develop leaders and help my people win and get them to what they want to achieve and what they aspire to be essentially. Because that's our goals. And my job in that is to continue to lead from the front and show them what's possible, to know, hey, you can build and you can produce too. Or hey, you can produce and you can build too. Like all of that is there for you. But again, just developing leadership, that's my main thing. But in order for me to develop leadership and call leaders up to a higher level, I got to be able to develop myself and get to a higher level myself.
Mm.
Because I can only speak at the plane that I'm at right now. In order to be able to get to, I'm an AO. So in order to get to somebody to AO, I got to level up a little bit higher than that. I got to level my mindset up because I'm only gonna get them as far as I can get. So that's what's on my mind right now. And that's where my heart is. And I just got to continue to develop myself because I develop myself a lot more now than I did before. Because I realized the longer, especially intentionality with reading, and listening to podcasts, because I realized that the more I avoid it and the longer I take to embrace it, the more time and the more money it will cost me.
Mm.
Because a lot of answers that we have.
What are your favorite one or two books or podcasts? Like the
So for
Canvas one.
me, when it comes to books, my favorite book of all time, a lot of you guys may have read this or you heard it, and you may have not read it, but my favorite book of all time has been The Five Voices. When I read that, that opened up doors for me when I realized what my voice was and it's why I thought the way I thought and how I was heard because I'm a pioneer creative. So when I read that, I started understanding everything and I understand the habits that I fell into and all those things. So that one, and then the other book was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I read that like right before I hit agency ownership, and that one right there, that's a first of all that's a pioneer's book. But that one was huge for me because I realized the ball is always in my court. It doesn't matter if my agency fell apart tomorrow. I have to take ownership in it, and guess what? I have the power to control building it back up. Whether my agency does good or bad, the ball is in my court. I have to take ownership of it. So those would be the two books that are huge
Yeah.
or have played an instrumental part of my journey.
I love that. I love both of those too. It's been a while since I've read Extreme Ownership, but that one will light for. I'm also a pioneer creative, so that one will light a fire in someone that speaks that pioneer language. That's gonna be like, okay, like let's go. Like
Yeah, let's go.
I will knock things over if I need to knock things over. That's so good. Dude, I'm so grateful for your time, man. I'm inspired by you. Just love seeing what you're doing. I'm in your corner. I am cheering for you. I'm so excited for what you're building. So wish I was as wise as you are when I was your age. Like that, I would have been so awesome. So it's really just hopeful for me to see a generation coming up that's thinking like you, acting like you, being proactive like you. Really, really exciting. Guys, can we in the comments just leave some words of thanks for Mr. Michael Mathews? Let him know the impact that he made tonight and that you're going to take away and implement in your business so his impact doesn't just end tonight. Because he didn't come on here to give us an hour to be an hour. He came on here because he believed his words were going to leave an impact that people were going to go implement, that it was going to trickle and ripple out from tonight. Hope you're reading these comments, dude.
I am. This is super awesome. And I appreciate you. I appreciate every single one. I don't take opportunities like this lightly. And I love coming on calls. Obviously be able to see so many people. And I love the fact that so many people have their cameras on and engaged. And then even earlier in the call, I'm always a student. I'm a student in the game through and through. And I was just taking notes on the PowerPoint. I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea right there. I should focus, I should highlight that. So I love it. But I appreciate you guys for giving me the opportunity. Again, there's so many people that poured into my journey. We stand on top of the shoulders of giants, so I don't take things like this lightly at all.
Love that. Hey, really appreciate you, dude. We'll talk soon. Don't be a stranger.
Absolutely.
All right. Good night, y'all.